Today, we're looking at the top 3 priorities for President Tinubu in 2025. Hello guys, and Happy New Year. From us at Teptv to you, we say thank you for watching, liking, and sharing our videos in 2024. We hope to do bigger in this new year. Also, always feel free to give your opinion in our videos in the comment section below. From us to you, we wish you a prosperous new year. Now, 2024 was a brutal year for many Nigerians. The fuel prices increased nearly 4 times in 1 year, and although it came down in recent weeks, it is not comparable to the initial increase. With fuel prices at an all-time high, energy prices soared, especially for those in Band A. Food inflation went over 30% according to the Bureau of Statistics, and well, the exchange rate passed the 1,000 naira mark. All in all, if you survived Nigeria, a big congratulations to you. In the new year, the President of Nigeria, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, has fed the Nigerians once again the message of hope. While we are not here to talk about the speech that he had, that's the New Year speech, we are not exactly here to talk about that. We would like to look at some very important things. Hope really is a good breakfast, but a terrible dinner. It's safe to say that the president has spent a third of his time in office. Of course, if you're going to calculate 4 years, you know he has spent a third of his time already in office by now, having spent more than 18 months already, and should speak more on tangible achievements and underline the word tangible than campaign rhetoric. So it's not necessarily about hope right now. It should be more about what has been done in the last 18 months. Anyways, in the spirit of optimism, we have drawn out 3 big things the president should seek to achieve in year 2025. Number 1, reducing the cost of governance. When a child is told by his father that playing games, for example, is a bad thing, because such son too can also find a retrospect for his father. Now, this is the most difficult time in the history of Nigerians. For Nigerians, where people cannot feed themselves 3 square meals in a day, and the government is having the largest cabinet in the 4th Republic. You can say that more ministers are needed to bring in more productivity, but the reality tells a different story. Nigeria spends more on its government, yet the entire GDP grew by less than 3%. In short, if you Google Wikipedia and Google the GDPs in the world, it is projected that we're supposed to have a deflation in 2025. So that means that Nigeria's GDP, rather than increase, didn't mean deflation. I meant that there's a decrease in the GDP, more or less like a recession. So rather than Nigeria's GDP increase in 2025, well, that's according to Wikipedia, there is a projected decrease in the GDP of Nigeria to about $194 billion. Of course, you can almost point that to the exchange rates, but in the end of the day, you know what I mean exactly. Now, just recently, we discovered that the budget deficits of 2024 increased by about 28%, meaning that the actual budget deficit that was projected for 2024 increased, meaning that we borrowed more money. And at the end of the day, Nigeria at a time that cannot afford over 40 ministers, we're having this large cabinet. So there is a need for the government to seriously bring in the change stock. You could borrow from Javier Milei in Argentina and cut down the cost of governance. Okay, number 2, reduce insecurity. Of course, every Nigerian knows that the basic rhetoric right now is insecurity. We have gotten so used to insecurity that whenever we hear the news, 7 were killed, 10 were killed, some Nigerians no longer get moved. You see persons complaining, okay, it's getting better. What's getting better? People are dying. So there are very serious issues in Nigeria right now, and the country is losing a lot of its territories to non-state actors. Bandits now collect taxes in some parts of the country, and traveling by road is almost tantamount to going on a scary adventure in the wilderness. Now, a recent article by Vanguard talks about how the illegal mining fuels insecurity in the north. Of course, we can do another video about that, of how the insecurity that we find in some parts in the north is fueled by the illegal mining that happens. You can take examples of Zamfara, Nasarawa, but that's for another video. This is just one of the issues that causes insecurity. There are some who has to do with land grabbing, like what happens in the Middle Belt, where you see farmers and herders clashes, and so many others. And then there are just some insurgent terrorists who just have this mindset of killing people, and maybe like bringing back the Hitler days and the Nazi Germany. But that's not the context of today's video. So there is a need for the government to have a sit down with the security operatives. The military are doing their best, but there's a need for the government to have a sit down with the military and find out what exactly is the shortcoming, what's causing the shortcoming. Is it a lack of training? Is it a lack of training? Is it lack of tools? Is it lack of adequate personnel? And the government should look into funding this to get better results. There is no point us taking us 2 steps forward, 10 steps backward, 2 steps forward, 5 steps backward every single time. The reality is the insecurity has not gotten better for as far back as since 10 years ago. It's still the same. Let's forget all the propaganda. Let's forget all the shenanigans. So there is a need for us to look at it. What exactly is going on? If it's the case of the military does not have sufficient tools, or there is some sabotage in one place or the other, the government needs to take definite steps towards it, except if they are not ready to solve the problem. The third and final thing that we're looking at as the top 3 priorities for President Tinubu in 2025 is to actively defend the naira. The reality is that economic policies are not bad, but they must be put into perspective. And in this case, the lab rats used are usually real human beings. When you're doing economics is also like a science, but in this case, the lab rats are usually human beings and their livelihoods. You cannot try to pick a tomato that fell into a swampy water and then lose your entire arm to a crocodile. It makes absolutely no sense. So the problem the CBN wanted to solve was, number one, the depletion of the foreign reserves. And now the currency is 3 times worthless. It has affected our global GDP. It has affected the purchasing power of Nigerians. It has limited our ability to spend. Because of that, companies have had to find ingenious ways of increasing revenue so as to be able to meet up with increments in salary for staffs, even at a time where some of the goods and some of the stuffs they use, if it's in an IT sector, maybe the servers they use, or if it's in the manufacturing sector, the machines that they use are dollar purchased and have increased. So it's like saying that a company spends 20,000 naira before and now has to spend 40,000 naira and still has to find a way to make more profit so that they can pay staffs higher salaries so that they can stay in offices. Now, there is a need for the government to rethink this situation, because an egg that was sold for 15 naira before is now for 200 naira. A jerrycan of rice that was sold for 250 naira is now over 1,200 naira. A tuber of yam that was 2,500 before is now sold for 8,000 naira. When you look at the Nigerian population, Nigeria has a population of over 200 million people, and we can conveniently say that about 50 million people or less are the ones who have ever had any transaction to do with naira to dollar. So if you're saying that you want to make sure there is no quote and unquote free dollar because of 50 million or less people, the reality is that you have put the entire 216 million people, maybe perhaps apart from politicians, you have put the entire 216 million people in poverty. So there is a need for the government to, rather than pick the tomato in the swamp, just ignore the tomato and get a new one. So it is important that the government actually looks at why we should be having BDCs when the actual institutions, such as the banks, the commercial banks, should be serving its purpose. Why should we have, it's in the setup of Nigeria that you see that institutions are not being trusted. Whether it is because the government is not interested, or whether the institutions are not trusted, Because for example, you see the case that the bank's ATM is not working, but POS has money to give to you. You see the case where banks cannot help you to transact your foreign currencies, but there is aboki beside the road who is ready to collect your naira or your dollar and give you what you need. So we discovered that because these institutions are not being trusted for whatever corruption that is there is a need to look critically into the resolutioning of the entire Nigerian system. And perhaps maybe one day we might have the Nigeria of our dreams. Whichever one it is, we'll continue hoping for a better Nigeria. A Nigeria that works for everyone. Thank you for sticking with us in this video. My name again remains Shegun Ajayi.